Good evening, my friends, and happy Sunday. I hope you're all having a wonderful weekend so far. And more importantly, welcome to my brand new bit on the side channel, The Criminal Spud, where I'm going to explore some true crime in a short and informal way. So I watch a lot of reality TV. I watch a lot of TV in general, hence my other channel, The Sofa Spud Reviews. But I do also watch a lot of true crime, and I have done since very early childhood, as far back as I can remember, which I know, irresponsible parenting, but it was the 80s. You could smoke in hospitals. It was just a different time. So I'm going to review some of the cases that I've looked at and watched on various documentaries throughout the week, and I'll probably release them every weekend going forward. So if you're a true crime fan like me, you're going to know that it comes in many different shapes and sizes. It's not one size fits all, and some days you're just not in the headspace for it. So some of the content may be upsetting or even disturbing for some folks out there, and that's okay. If this is not your jam, please go ahead, hit the skip button. Go visit my other channel, The Sofa Spud Reviews, for something lighter and less stabby and far more judgmental, because you never know, you might like it. But if you do enjoy this content, go ahead and let me know by liking and subscribing. And by all means, leave me some good recommendations for cases that you've seen and found interesting lately. So today we are going to go to Knoxville, Tennessee, and we're going to talk about a case that has fascinated me. I can't tell you how many hours of my week has gone into reading about this case. I watched the trial. At one point I was in my hairdresser appointment and I was scrolling through like old news articles complete with pictures, and my colorist actually leaned over my shoulder and was like, "What the actual fuck are you looking at on your phone?" So I knew in that moment that yes, this is going to be the case that I talk about on here today. And this is the case of Mike and Lisa Guy. Now, Mike's name is Joel Michael Guy, and his son has the same name, so it can get a little bit confusing. So what I'm going to do for the purposes of this case, because Joel Michael Guy Sr.'s sisters and friends referred to him as Mike, and they refer to him a lot in the trial as Mike, I'm just going to call Joel Michael Sr. Mike. Okay, so Mike and Lisa Guy were a married couple from Knoxville, Tennessee, and they'd been happily married for over 30 years. Mike had 3 daughters from a previous relationship, and Lisa had pretty much been in the picture since they were very, very young. I think the oldest might have been 3 years old. So as far back as the daughters could remember, Lisa was in the picture. She was basically a second mother to them, and they were really, really close. As I said, they hung out a lot. The kids were all grown at this stage and had kids of their own, but they would spend a lot of time together. They would talk almost daily. They were all on a family WhatsApp group chat type thing together. And Mike was known to be very funny. He would send really stupid jokes and funny pictures and smart comments. And they were quite outdoorsy. Like I said, they were quite a fun-loving family. They loved to shoot guns. They loved to go out on the family boat. They would all kind of congregate in the garage and sit on their lawn chairs and just drink beers and laugh. Like, it seemed like a really fun family to be part of. But there was one family member that wasn't quite cut from the same cloth. So after Lisa and Mike got married, they did have one more child of their own, and this child was Joel Michael Jr. So we'll call him Joel Michael, but Joel Michael was a shit. He was an entitled, spoilt little brat. He looked like Jeffrey Dahmer and Jonah Hill had a baby, and yeah, he was going to be the perpetrator in the events that we're going to talk about. So all of this happened around the Thanksgiving period of 2016. So at this point, Mike and Lisa are thinking about their retirement. Mike has just been laid off from the engineering firm that he works for. And Lisa's kind of like, do you know what? Why don't I just hand in my notice? Why don't we just start our retirement now? They were 61 and 55. So yeah, they were still quite young, they may be a little young to retire. However, they had enough in the pot that they could retire. So they worked out the figures, they went through their budget down to how much they spent on a weekly basis in beer and cigarettes. And they were like, do you know what? Yes, we can absolutely do this. Screw it. Let's retire. Let's enjoy our lives. And Mike's dad had passed away and the family home was gone through probate. So Mike said, do you know what? Why don't we just buy that house and we'll move to Sir Gwynsville, move back home, we've family nearby, and we'll sell the house here in Knoxville. And let's just downsize, let's do it. So this plan kind of started formulating around October 2016. And this was very, very bad news for Joel Michael Jr. because at 28 years of age, he had never worked a day in his life. He was one of these perpetual student types who just left high school and went to college, did a semester or two here, decided it wasn't for him and changed course, changed direction, but never actually finished anything. So he's nearly 10 years in third level education and he hasn't achieved a degree. Like, it's just, the mind boggles. But not only has he not achieved a degree in 10 years of full-time education, he has never had so much as a part-time job in a coffee shop. Like, he earns jack shit. And he lives in this apartment with his one and only friend in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And you're probably thinking, wait, how does he pay for this apartment? How does he pay for his rent and his lifestyle if he does nothing? And yes, you've guessed it, it's Lisa Guy. Lisa Guy basically gets up in the morning and goes to work solely to earn a paycheck to stick in the post to Joel Michael Jr. She sends her entire paycheck for her admin job to her son. Prior to being let go from his job, Mike would have had plenty of money with his salary to support both of them. Lisa never actually had to work. She could have just stayed home if she wanted to, but no, she got up every morning and went to work so that she could send an entire paycheck to this layabout who has done nothing with his life. And that's a whole debate in and of itself. Like, I think that is batshit crazy. I think that is nuts. There's wanting to help your child and wanting them to be able to focus full time on their studies so they're not distracted. And look, if you have the means to do so, who am I or anybody else to tell you how you should or should not spend your money? But in this case, I just think Joel Michael Jr. was never going to finish college because that would mean he might actually have to go and get a job and join the real world. So at 28 years of age, this lump was just pretending to be a student essentially and cashing in his mother's hard-earned paychecks to fund his shitty little life. And you're probably like, oh, you know, sometimes it's hard when it's your baby boy and you're so close to them and they have you wrapped around their little finger. Not so much. Joel Michael Jr. was not exactly the warm and fuzzy kind. There was nothing endearing about him. There was nothing that he really contributed to the family that would act as some kind of a mitigating factor. Well, yeah, okay, fair enough. He is a little bit of a sponge and he does leech off his mum at 28. But you know what? He's got so much potential and he's such a lovely guy. No, none of that. He was like this nasty recluse. He wouldn't lower himself to talk to most of the family. His one friend, who he lived with and he'd known for over 10 years, didn't even know that Joel Michael Jr. had 3 half-sisters. He had never met his father, Mike. He had only met his mother, Lisa, once. Like, it's weird. And like I said, this guy didn't have any other friends. And he had moved away from the family home in Knoxville, Tennessee, but Lisa had preserved his bedroom, saved all of his toys down to his Beanie Babies. It was like a shrine to him, but not that he ever really visited. He probably came once or twice a year, Thanksgiving or Christmas, and my guess is because he was expecting some cash in a card, you know, to take back with him to Baton Rouge. And outside that, he just stayed in his room for the holidays. He wouldn't talk to anybody. He wouldn't socialize. He didn't give a shit about any of their lives. He didn't even know his sister Michelle's kids' names. Like, come on. But his cushy little existence was about to get thrown a curveball because Mike and Lisa were about to retire. And when I said earlier that they had gone through their full budget and they had determined how much money they needed to live down to their beer and cigarettes each week, yeah, that didn't include the Joel Michael Jr. funds. Like, they no longer were in a position where they could support him financially. Lisa used to just send her entire paycheck to Joel Michael Jr., but now she wasn't going to be getting a paycheck. They were going to be living as pensioners. So the gravy train was coming into the station and Joel Michael Jr. was going to have to alight from the train and find a job. And everybody in Mike and Lisa's life kind of knew the story with Joel Michael Jr. They kind of knew that Lisa's son was a complete sponge and he lived off her paychecks, but conversations were kind of being had. There were rumblings and Mike and Lisa had kind of told people of their plans to retire, and they had mentioned that this was going to mean Joel Michael Jr. will actually have to stand on his own 2 feet, get a job and find a way to support himself going forward. And they were going to really sit him down at Christmas time and just lay it all out for him in very unequivocal terms, because it's not the first time they had tried to broach this subject. Mike in particular had brought this up a number of times before in the past with Joe Michael Jr., that it was going to have to, come time for him to fly free, financially, and they were going to be retiring. But now it's at the stage where this is becoming reality, and probably a little bit sooner than Joe Michael Jr. had anticipated. And around mid-November, it got very real, because their house in Knoxville, Tennessee actually sold. They went sale agreed, and the new owners wanted them to clear out and move on within the next couple of weeks. So Lisa went ahead and handed her 2 weeks notice into work. So the official plan was the family were going to have their last hurrah, their last family Thanksgiving dinner in the home in Knoxville. And then Lisa was due to finish up. Her last day in work was going to be the 2nd of December. And that was them. They were done, and they were going to be moving to Sirgoinsville to start their retirement. And to everybody's surprise, Joe Michael Jr., who was not expected to make an appearance for Thanksgiving this year, decided that he was going to drive down from Baton Rouge. He was going to make the journey down to be part of this year's Thanksgiving. And I can only imagine that Lisa was over the moon with this. She probably was like, oh my God, my son, he's driving all the way down from Baton Rouge to spend our last Thanksgiving, together in this house. This is super special. And I'm sure that she was delighted. I can imagine her telling everybody in her office that it was going to be, a complete family for this Thanksgiving, which is just sickening. But anyway, Thanksgiving rolls around, and Joe Michael Jr. is being uncharacteristically nice. Like, not just like nice, he's being normal, he's being friendly, outgoing, happy even. He's happy to see people, he's engaging, he's not hiding out in his room. And his sister Michelle even comments that he was being nice to her kids, which straight away was weird to her. And she must have had the heebie-jeebies, because she said they went upstairs to his room. Joe Michael wanted to give the kids some of his old toys, seen as though they were clearing out the house. And Michelle said this was so out of character that she went upstairs to, quote unquote, drop off the laundry. But really she wanted to just pop her head in and check if everything was okay and what's going on. I mean, if your brother decides that he wants to give some toys to your kids and you find that so weird that you need to follow them up to the room and check that they're okay, I mean, that says it all. And she said that it was really creepy, because when she was upstairs, every time she turned around, Joe Michael Jr. was nearly shadowing her. He was hovering behind her, and it just creeped her out. She got really weird vibes from this. Just something was not right. Something was off here. And Michelle and her kids went home. They didn't stay the night. They left on Thursday night, and Joe Michael Jr. was going to stay for the entire weekend with Lisa and Mike. So again, I can only imagine how delighted Lisa was to have her son home for the whole weekend. And not only that, but this, nice side of Joe Michael Jr. continued, because on the Friday, the 25th of November, he drove all the way out to Sirgoinsville to the new house with his dad, Mike, and he helped him move their family's boat. So yeah, it was uncharacteristically weird. And his sister Michelle again did say it wasn't that he was being nicer than usual or friendlier than usual. It was that he was being friendly for the first time. Like, he was never friendly or outgoing or social. But all became clear very quickly, because the very next day, Saturday the 26th of November, Joe Michael Jr.'s true motives would become apparent in the most brutal and vicious of ways. Because over the last few weeks, as Lisa and Mike were brimming with excitement and optimism about the prospects of their retirement and this wonderful new chapter in their lives, Joe Michael Jr. was in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, spinning out, thinking, holy crap, I'm going to actually have to get a job. They're serious. Like, this can't happen. And he wasn't about to let this happen, because he needed Lisa to keep working so that he could keep cashing her paychecks. And if that wasn't going to be happening, how the hell was he going to survive? How was he going to pay his rent? Basically, Joe Michael Jr. was in diabolical scheming mode. And he was starting to do the mental math as to, okay, well, if they're not going to be worth anything to me alive, what would they be worth to me dead? And he started running those numbers, and he started listing, and I mean listing. He had a little notebook, And he would write in his little notebook, which we'll come back to later because this little notebook is very important in this story. He starts writing down a list of all of their assets. And he starts calculating what kind of, death in service benefits there would be if Lisa were to die before she finishes up her job. What kind of life insurance policy does Mike have out? What kind of property do they own? What loans are still outstanding against those properties? What are their cars worth? Yes, he did a full-on profit and loss balance sheet type exercise on Mike and Lisa's financial life. And not just, how much would I get in a life insurance payout if they were to die? He actually went as far as to think, okay, well, hold on now, because Mike has 3 other daughters. And, if they were to die, I wouldn't want the other daughters to get anything. I really want to maximize the amount that I get out of this. So it would be very important that if they were to meet an untimely demise, that Mike would go first so that, his assets would then pass to Lisa, who has only but one biological child, Joel Michael Jr. So yeah, he really got into the nitty gritty, and yes, he did write all of this down in his shitty chicken scratch handwriting. So we get to the morning of Saturday, the 26th of November. And for all accounts, it is a normal morning. Joel Michael Jr. tells Lisa that he simply must have ice cream and sausages. So she goes out to a Walmart to do a bit of shopping and pick up the grocery items that her son has requested. And Mike is at home in the house. He's up in one of the spare bedrooms that they kind of use as like a home gym. And he's doing a little bit of a light workout. And this is actually the first part of Joel Michael Jr.'s plan, because he may have very well wanted his sausages and ice cream, but mainly he just wanted Lisa out of the house. Because as I've mentioned before, he will benefit a lot more if Mike meets his end before Lisa. So Mike is home alone with Joel Michael Jr. and he's in the exercise room doing a bit of a light workout. It's not even lunchtime yet. It's a beautiful Saturday morning. It's Thanksgiving weekend. And this is where Joel Michael Jr. launches a vicious knife attack. And it's very difficult for us to know exactly what happened in this room, particularly because of what Joel Michael Jr. did to the bodies post-mortem, which we will come to. But we know that this is the point in the story where Mike loses his life. And he fought back. He didn't go down without a fight. We do know that. But the exact events and the sequence of events are unclear. But we do know that Mike loses his life first in this story. And not long after that, Lisa arrives home with her bags of groceries from Walmart. And she makes her way up the stairs. God knows what the hell she walked into that house and heard going on. But we know that she made her way upstairs, and we know that her attack began and ended upstairs also. So this psychotic little shit has done it. He's ended the lives of his mum and dad, Lisa and Mike Guy, on Saturday the 26th of November 2016. But it's not until Monday that the true horror of what took place is uncovered. And like I said at the beginning of this story, Lisa and Mike were very well liked people. And Lisa got up every morning, Monday to Friday, and dragged her ass into work to hand a paycheck over to her ungrateful mistake of a son. So when Lisa didn't show up for work on Monday morning, it was not long until her supervisor said, something here is not right. And by 7:30 that morning, her supervisor had texted her, had called her, and was starting to truly freak out. She said that she must have called her about 20 times because she knew this wasn't Lisa. She knew that even though she had handed in her 2 weeks notice, she wasn't someone who was just going to kind of give the middle finger and blow her off. She knew that she had plans with other co-workers to do a proper send-off into her retirement. So Lisa's supervisor, Jennifer, decided, okay, no, that's it. I'm ringing the police and I'm telling them that I want a wellness check done. So she does this and she calls the police and says, listen, I have an employee who hasn't turned up for work and I'm really worried. This is not like her. Can somebody please go and just do a wellness check? Just make sure that everything is okay. So the police do, they take all of the information and they go and they drive by Lisa and Mike's house. They see that there's cars there. They go around to the side gate and they whistle for the dog, but no dog appears. And they kind of think, yeah, look, It's odd, it's strange, but there's nothing blatantly suspicious. We don't really have probable cause to go inside the house at this point. And look, it's very early. Like, as I said, Lisa was due in work for 7, and by 7:15 to 7:30, Jennifer was freaking out. So they might very well have just wanted to give it a little bit more time. But Jennifer, the supervisor, was like, no, you don't understand. This is absolutely not like Lisa at all. And Jennifer at this point had even reached out to Mike. She had Mike's number on file as next of kin, and same exact thing, nothing back. And Jennifer had even reached out to Michelle, so the guy's daughter, on Facebook. And it turns out that, Michelle hadn't been getting any text messages back from Lisa or Mike all weekend. And she actually thought that maybe she had done something, that maybe someone was pissed off at her and she was getting a little bit paranoid as to why she wasn't getting any responses. And the other sister, Candice, she hadn't received a birthday message from her dad because Sunday, the day before, was Candice's birthday. And she had never gone a birthday without getting a message from her dad. So the girls were already kind of worried and concerned, but then getting this message from Lisa's boss to say that Lisa hasn't turned up from work, their blood ran cold. So meanwhile, back in Knoxville, Tennessee, the second wellness check is underway. And at this point, I think the coppers knew that there was definitely something not right here. So it's still Monday, it's Monday afternoon, and they are back for round 2 of wellness check on the Guy household. And they go around the back of the house and notice that there's a hole where the doorknob would have normally been. And Detective McCord gets down on his knee and he kind of leans in to try and peek through this hole where the doorknob would have been. And he just feels this intense heat billowing out through that hole in the door. And he can smell some kind of a strong chemical substance, can't quite put his finger on it, but let's be honest, if you're doing a wellness check and you can smell a strong chemical odour, that is probably not a good sign. So eventually the detectives gain access through the garage door. They find a clicker in one of the cars and they get into the house through the garage door. And the minute they enter the house, this wall of heat just hits them. The entire house is boiling. It is humid. It's like, when you step off a plane in a really hot country on your first day of holidays. The thermostats are set to 90 degrees Fahrenheit. And I actually had to look that up because we're all about the Celsius over here. That's 32 degrees Celsius. So for anyone who operates on Celsius, yeah, it's very, very hot in this house. And there's this big, huge pot bubbling away still on the stove, but there is no sign of anybody else in this house. They just hear this vague, weak, tired barking of a dog who is locked in a room somewhere upstairs. And there's a bunch of weird, suspicious shit kind of scattered throughout the house. So on, the breakfast dining room table, there's the wallets of both Lisa and Mike just sitting there. So that's not a good sign. Their cars are here, their wallets are here. Where are Lisa and Mike? And on the table next to the wallets, there's a vice grips and a hammer. So again, not looking very promising. And then they go out to the hall and they see the other side of the front door. There's a bunch of grocery bags that have just been dropped at the front door and abandoned. And if you remember, Lisa was at Walmart on Saturday and she came home with the ice cream and the sausages. So everything had just been dropped when she walked through the door. So I imagine Lisa got home and heard something horrific happening upstairs, dropped all of the shopping on the spot and ran up the stairs to see what was happening, which is just beyond chilling. But so far, they're seeing all this weird stuff, but no people, no sign of any life whatsoever. But they keep coming across, room to room, bottles of bleach and cleaning supplies and rubber gloves. So a lot of weird shit that suggests something sinister is happening in this house, but they haven't quite come across anything too gruesome until they go up the stairs. So Detective McCord and the other officers start to go upstairs, and straight away things become much more gruesome. So they find small blood spots and staining on the carpet as they walked up the stairs. They saw their first blood spatter on the wall as they came up the stairs. And then at the top of the stairs, they notice more paraphernalia, a bucket, some knives, and a big pool of blood. And immediately they know, okay, something horrific has happened here. And Detective McCord looks down the hall on the top floor and he sees a pair of hands that are not connected to a human. They see the pool of blood that is left in the exercise room where we know that Mike has been viciously attacked. And then the police move into the master room and the master bathroom where things reach just peak level fucked up. So they walk into the master bedroom and there's this big plastic tarp sheeting down on the floor. There's tools, there is chemicals, there's knives. So you've got everything from Clorox to bleach to baking soda to muriatic acid, gloves. You can only imagine what was happening or what was about to happen in this space. And there's like plug-in heaters, like space heaters, like blasting the heat into this room. And then they turned into the master ensuite bathroom, and there's these two big plastic tubs, like vats. And as Detective McCord moves towards these vats, he notices just the smell of just rot and bleach and chemical becoming overwhelming. And he looks into these vats, which I'm sure he has lived to regret every day since then, because inside these vats, these big bulging vats full of chemical, he finds the partially liquefied remains of Mike and Lisa Guy. And by partially liquefied, I mean the skin had completely dissolved from Mike's head area. It was just skeletal, to be honest, by this stage. Whatever combination of chemicals that, were put in these vats for the bodies to just degrade in had kind of somewhat done the job. There was still a lot of skin left intact, but on top of the chemical degrading the bodies, it was very apparent that these were not complete bodies. So the bodies had been dismembered. There were parts missing, to put it very bluntly. There were hands. We already know, Detective McCord has found a pair of human hands disconnected from its body, but both bodies had their arms and their legs disconnected from the torso at the hip. We had feet cut off, and one of the bodies, the most glaringly obvious missing piece, was a head. Now, if you remember when the police entered this property and they came in through the garage door and they were hit by that wall of heat and they noticed that there was still a large pot simmering away on the stove, yeah, guess what was in that pot? So inside that pot, still bubbling away on the stove, they found a human head with its hair and scalp still intact, and this was later determined to be Lisa Guy. So I cannot even imagine, nor do I think any of us could ever imagine, what it would feel like to walk into that house of horrors and be the first person on scene discovering all this. And as I said, Jennifer, Lisa's boss, she'd been in contact with the daughters. She had kind of raised the alarm that there was something going on. Jennifer had told, Mike's daughter, Michelle, you need to get in contact with this detective and figure out what's happening. So Michelle did that. Michelle called and she spoke to Detective McCord. And at this point, Detective McCord had been inside that house and he had seen what I have just described to you. And he tells Michelle, you need to come here and we need to meet up. We need to speak. There's been an incident, but whatever you do, you don't go to that house. Now put yourself for a moment in Michelle's shoes. You're freaking out. You haven't heard from your parents for days. You go from being paranoid that you've said something to upset someone. Then you go to being worried when you find out that your sister didn't get a birthday message off either of them. And then you go to full-fledged panic mode when you get a call from the boss to say, Lisa hasn't presented for work. And now you're speaking to a detective and they're telling you whatever you do, don't go to that house. I mean, it must have been like this outer body experience moment where you have no idea what's going on, but at the same time, deep down in your gut, in that moment when you're told not to go to the house, that something horrific that you don't even want to think about has happened. So Michelle goes and she meets up with Detective McCord and he starts to bring her through the events, or at least what they know so far. And you're probably wondering, where is this little shit Joel Michael Jr.? Well, during the course of the attack that he launched on his parents, he sustained some minor injuries to his hand. So he had a pretty bad boo-boo and he needed some medical attention. Now, he had gone to Walmart, the same Walmart that his mom Lisa had gone and purchased the ice cream and sausages in. He went there and used the cash from their wallets to buy some plasters and some antiseptic, for his own pathetic little injury. And he went straight back to the house and tried his best to get back to work with the dismemberment and liquefaction of his parents. But Joel Michael Jr. is not someone who's ever really done a hard day's work, so he didn't anticipate how backbreaking and strenuous this task would be. Hacking up 2 humans. It's not exactly a breeze. You have to put some elbow grease into it. And as Sunday went on, his injury was hurting him more and more, and he decided, okay, I really need medical attention. So he's not going to go to the local doctor because he thought that might be suspicious. So he drives all the way back to Baton Rouge and he goes to the on-campus doctor. He gets himself fixed up and then he decides, okay, Monday, I'm going to drive back down and I'm going to get back to work. I'm going to finish this task. But of course, Monday the bodies have already been discovered and it's tented off for the forensic unit to come in. So Joel Michael Jr., pulls onto the road of the parents' house, sees all the cops at the house, and he's like, shit, the jig is up. I just kind of have to roll with it now. And if you think that he was at least intelligent enough to realize he would be number 1 suspect, then no, you're wrong, because he just drives back to his own apartment in Baton Rouge and just hangs out there and waits for them to come find him, which they do by the very next day. Because when the forensics team were in Lisa and Mike's house going through room by room for evidence, they come across a backpack in Joel Michael Jr.'s bedroom in their house. And inside this backpack is the notebook. Remember I mentioned the notebook and how this was going to be really important to our story? Yeah, so Joel Michael Jr., the gifted kid who got accepted to Louisiana State University to study plastic surgery. Now, I don't know what fucking bell curve they grade on, but also I didn't know you could just go to school for plastic surgery. I thought you needed to actually go to medical school and then specialize in plastic surgery, but that's a whole other thing. Joel Michael Jr., who has spent 9 years in total at 3rd level education, decided that it would be a good idea to keep a notebook not only detailing his motivation for this horrific crime, but he also basically wrote a shopping list of all of the items that he needed to buy to assist him in carrying out this horrific crime. And then he details, blow by blow, how he wants to carry out this murder, how he wants to dismember them, how he wants to clean up after it, how he wants to try and frame Mike potentially for this. And it kind of reads like a bizarre instruction manual for the world's dumbest psychopath, but I really can't do it any justice without just reading it to you. So I'm going to do that. I have the court documents here in front of me, and I'm going to read to you what Joel Michael Guy actually wrote himself in this little journal, because it kind of speaks for itself. So here we go. Get killing knives, quiet, multiple. Get carving knives to make small pieces. Get sledgehammer, crush bones. Bring blender and food grinder, grind meat. Get bleach, denature proteins. Get plastic bin for denaturation process. Does not matter where they're killed, just get rid of bloody spots to prevent evidence of time of death, not the mattress or couches. Get rid of bodies inside house. There and my DNA already there. And then he has written and scribbled out, open up doggy door to provide entryway. Flush chunks down toilet, not garbage disposal. Get plastic sheeting for disposal process. Get hollow point bullets just in case. This was also scribbled out. Will be seen buying bullets. Just use computer room gun. Check to make sure there are bullets. Last resort. He's not alive to claim her half of the insurance money. All mine, $500,000. Yes, he actually wrote that, people. He actually wrote that. Sorry, back to it. Flood the house. Turn heater up as high as it goes. Speeds decomposition. Bleach reacts with luminol just like blood. Douse area with bleach. Big sprayer. Lie. Trash compactor. Body gives time of death, in brackets alibi. Don't have to get rid of body if there is no forensic evidence on the body. His fingerprints and DNA, in big block capitals. I don't know why. Minimize things I touch throughout visit. Wear gloves and socks to prevent fingerprints and footprints. Drop something down the garbage disposal to break it. Get him on the ground fixing it. Kill him with the knife. Clean up mess from him before she gets home. Kill her with the knife. Kill dog after, and then he has kill dog after scribbled out. Leave alive. Take dog with you. Place her in the shower. Turn on hot water and point at her to get rid of forensics. Remove her clothes and take them with me for disposal. Place him in plastic bin and use it to get him into the upstairs bathroom. Cut off his arm and plant his flesh under her fingernails. Place her hand with his DNA so that his DNA is not washed away by shower. Use sodium hydroxide to destroy his soft tissue and soften bones for transport. Baste once every hour to accelerate. Flush sodium hydroxide down the toilet. Wash out bin with handheld shower head and then direct handheld into toilet to flush everything out of the pipes and into the public waterway. Douse killing room and then in brackets kitchen ? With bleach. Place hair curler with flammable paper and flammable containers of gasoline in 4 locations. His killing room, her killing room, his bathroom, her bathroom. Wipe down areas near killing rooms and bathrooms. Turn heaters up to 90 degrees to melt fingerprints and dry everything. Set her phone to send me a text message late Sunday to prove that I was in, it says BR, so I assume that's Baton Rouge, and she was, in quotes, alive. Leave through front door and wipe down doorknobs. Timer for flammables set for Friday at 10 a.m. so they can't report it. And I'm going to stop reading the list that this idiot wrote from there because it kind of then just gets into a stock take of Lisa and Mike's assets and a breakdown of what he's actually going to inherit once this ridiculous plan is carried out. And if you're wondering how much money was this life policy, yeah, he would have stood to inherit about 500 grand. And I know, the amount of money doesn't really matter. It doesn't really make anything more understandable or less understandable. The fact that he has done this horrific deed is so inexcusable and so twisted. And the fact that he was so stupid or arrogant, I can't decide which, that he would catalogue his whole thought process down to the motive, the sequence of events within this crime. And of course, he didn't execute this. So he spent all this time writing out in his little, jotter what he was going to do and how he was going to do it. But he never factored in the obvious things. He never factored in that Mike wasn't going to just take this. Mike was going to fight back. And that immediately just knocked his whole plan out of whack. He didn't factor in the fact that people love Lisa and Mike and they're going to notice immediately when they're not responding to text messages and they're not showing up to where they're meant to be on Monday morning. And when they apprehended him in Baton Rouge, he had a meat grinder in the boot of his car. So literally this whole notebook instruction manual correlated to the items that they found at the scene of the crime, the items that they found in his vehicle. And it was pretty much an open and closed, it was practically a signed confession. But do you think even at that stage he was just going to hold his hands up and say, yeah, look, I did it? No, of course not. He pled not guilty. He had the actual audacity to plead not guilty and put his sisters and his aunties through the hell of sitting in that courtroom on the stand and reliving this nightmare experience. And not only did he plead not guilty, he also wanted it stipulated that should he be found guilty by, a jury, then he wanted the death penalty. And I know you're probably like, wait, what? What do you mean? He's pleading not guilty. He's saying, I didn't do this crime. I'm not guilty. I shouldn't have to go to prison for this crime. But if you do find me guilty, don't just send me to prison. Send me to the electric chair. Like, yeah, absolutely bananas. But actually not so bananas, because Joel Michael Jr.'s thinking in doing this is to stretch it out as long as he possibly can. Kill time, tie it up in the courts for as long as possible, because he still actually believed that there was going to be a way for him to get his hands on this money. And if he could just drag this out as long as he could, there's more of a chance of the insurance companies just caving and paying out the funds to him. I mean, is there absolutely no limit to this guy's delusion? He is like the Eric Cartman of real life. And of course, you will be happy to know that he was found guilty as sin unanimously, and he is serving 2 consecutive life sentences. And he was, putting in appeals right up until 2023. He was tying the courts up with appeals, and his final appeal was denied in 2023. And I did actually have a sneaky little read of the court documents, because I was super curious to know on what grounds could he possibly think that he could get off. Like, how did he think that he was going to circumvent all of the evidence that was right there in front of us, that he handed to us on a silver platter? And you are not going to believe what his lawyers were trying to make stick. They were trying to say that the officers on the second wellness check didn't have, a legal basis to be in that house, because Joe Michael Jr., he didn't live there, but he was an invited guest that weekend. And as an invited guest to that home, Joe Michael Jr. should have had some kind of reasonable expectation of privacy as a guest in that home. And in entering the house without a warrant, the police breached Joe Michael Jr.'s right to privacy in seizing the backpack and the notebook. So yeah, I don't know how the judge kept a straight face, but suffice to say, he is going to rot in jail for the rest of his life. But he gets his wish. He will never have to work a day. He will never have to go and get a job, which is just absolutely sickening to think that Lisa and Mike lost their lives. They were at probably the most exciting part ever. They had raised their family, they had worked their whole lives, they had built up enough money to retire and to just spend the rest of their lives enjoying each other, enjoying their family, their grandkids, going out on the boat, going shooting, having a beer, and not setting their alarm in the morning, not having to get up and work themselves to the bone. Particularly Lisa. If we remember, Lisa went to work every morning. She was there at 7 a.m. and she worked 5 days a week for no money. She did this to send a paycheck to the most ungrateful, sociopathic little shit of a child. And the last thing that Lisa got to see before she left this world was that little shit of a child coming at her with a knife that he purchased with her money. And I truly hope that he is having a horrific time in prison. I hope that he is the prison's bitch and he is getting picked on every single day that he's in there. And if anyone is interested in going and watching the trial highlights, the Law and Crime Network on YouTube do have this trial up. It took place in 2020. It's relatively recent. I had never heard of this until this week. It popped up in like a recommended videos on Law and Crime, and I just clicked in and started watching it, and I went down a rabbit hole. I couldn't stop looking up things to do with this case. And on that note, I can hear that my voice is giving up on me because I have been rabbiting on for too long. So yeah, that's the case. That is Joel Michael Guy Jr., absolute psychopath extraordinaire, and the tragic murder of his parents, Lisa and Mike Guy Sr. Now, I will be back on the Criminal Spud next weekend to talk about God knows what case. And then I'll be back on the Sofa Spud reviews tomorrow to continue our conversation on Married at First Sight Australia. So that's it for this weekend, guys. Thanks for stopping by, and I will chat to you again soon. Sweet dreams.